Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. I'm certainly never going to get a job writing headlines for a newspaper. I think my presentation titles get longer every time I do one, and I'm here today to talk about the things an Apex developer should be aware of when developing Apex applications on an Oracle Autonomous database. My name is Paul Jones and I'm an Apex developer at Explorer. Quick standard slide about Explorer. Who are we? Our heritage in the Oracle Partner Network is strong, stable and growing. We're an Oracle Platinum partner with multiple specializations to our name, including managed services, engineered systems, Oracle Cloud implementations and software asset management. We're also the #1 Apex development consultancy in the UK with a particular focus on Forms to Apex projects and developing cloud native applications. We're the current Oracle Digital Partner of the Year, and we've also been lucky enough to win the UK OUG Database Partner of the Year for 5 years running, as voted for by our customers. So, first of all, a little about me. I am Paul Jones. I'm an Apex developer with many years experience with Oracle database technologies. I also train others in Apex development, do various public speaking events like these, primarily on Apex. We maintain a blog with useful ideas and subjects, which there is a link to at the end. But most importantly, I am a consultant and developer most of the time. I care passionately about the support and security of IT applications. They're actually the most common elements of my other presentations and blogs. I really try to promote developing in Apex and also help the continuing growth of Apex where possible, which is partly the reason for this presentation really. Apex has had and is having a fantastic growth in not just the Oracle user world, but also in the general development world, and I feel the topic I'm here today to talk about is something which has the potential to increase that growth and adoption in the general IT world even further. To be totally honest and upfront about it, in the past I have been known to refer to myself as a little bit of a cloud skeptic. I'll come back to that. So let's talk a little bit firstly about that growth of Apex that I referred to and where it might be coming from. Even if I had access to all of Oracle's internal statistics, because of the many ways in which Apex can be deployed and utilised, it's going to be very difficult to get a figure on its actual usage. But I did manage to find one statistic which I think gives a good indication of adoption really. I grabbed this picture off Twitter earlier this year. It shows the number of services signed up for on apex.oracle.com, and it really highlights a year-on-year growth. In case you aren't aware of apex.oracle.com, it's a free, relatively small Apex workspace anyone can sign up for really, predominantly really just for giving Apex a try. For many, it's possibly their first experience of a cloud-based true development service. Anyway, as you can see on the chart, since 2010 the number of services has increased steadily year on year, but in total there has been a 5-fold increase. Now obviously this is only apex.oracle.com workspaces. There are many other ways to use Apex which this statistic doesn't account for, but it's a useful way to start to judge its increasing usage. What are the possible reasons for this growth? Well, there are a number of them. More and more applications are becoming browser-based, with huge advantages in terms of deployment, support and availability. A lot of people with Forms applications are starting to migrate for a variety of different reasons. Businesses with existing EBS estates are looking for solutions to easily extend their functionality. It's a tool that receives regular updates, giving new functionality. It's a web development framework, so can integrate with and utilise the latest technologies, for example RESTful web services, Internet of Things, connections to other services. And there is a great growing community behind it. But what do I think is the #1 reason for its growth? The rising popularity of low-code development platforms, which Apex is, allowing rapid application development to develop useful applications more quickly and concentrate on the functionality rather than necessarily the technology. So let's set the scene and begin to address the reasons historically why I might have referred to myself as a little bit of a cloud skeptic. Historically, on a development project, once I had been provided the link to the Apex Workspace login page, I've got my database connection set up and I've connected any other tools I wanted to, I was usually pretty happy. And ultimately, I didn't really used to be that bothered or affected by what's at the other end, which is providing me with these things to do my primary job, developing an application. But things are starting to change, and more I'm being asked to wear many hats. Systems are required to interconnect and are talking to each other, so I'm having to be an architect. The size of the datasets I'm interacting with are growing at an extremely large rate, so I have to pay particular attention to performance and storage considerations, traditionally more done by a DBA. The role of a developer is also becoming much more DevOps, and I have to start thinking about multiple deployment environments, security patching, testing, release processes, and supporting the applications that I've developed going forwards. This, unfortunately, equals less time developing. Enterprises too are facing similar challenges really. Resourcing, there simply isn't enough people to fill the roles, especially in the security sphere. Patching, finding opportunities for downtime and upgrades of systems. Maintenance, so DBAs nowadays are spending the majority of their time addressing performance issues and responding to alerts. Control of costs, having large enterprise applications hosted locally on-premise can be extremely expensive to set up and maintain. And scalability, an uplift in the usage of systems can involve expensive upgrade and expansion projects. And support as well. The organisations, if they're on-premise, are ultimately wholly responsible for their systems, so will often have and need large support teams behind them. What is Oracle's answer to all of this? The cloud. Specifically, the Oracle Autonomous Database in the cloud. When I started preparing this presentation and gathering resources, I actually spent quite a long time deciding what exactly to include. But I was talking to someone who gave me the perfect answer really, which was, if you didn't know what it was, what would you want to know about it? So that's essentially what I've done, and this is the list that I've put together. We'll have a look at the current existing cloud landscape and what potential it has. And then we'll talk about the ADB, Autonomous Database, both from a history point of view and describe its features and how we go about signing up for it. We'll look at some classic uses for the Autonomous Database. We'll look at how we can potentially migrate to the Autonomous Database. And then the areas of particular focus and importance to me around support processes and if there are any new or additional security considerations and what the overall benefits and limitations are of developing on the Autonomous Database over, say, an on-premise environment. So first of all, the cloud landscape. On the left there, at the beginning of 2018, this was the picture of the cloud landscape, with Oracle having the lowest growth and almost the smallest share. On the right, according to Gartner.com, is the current and predicted revenue growth of public cloud services. So Oracle has a little bit of catching up to do in the cloud. So this is going to have to be pretty impressive in order to start making a dent in the biggest player's share and annual growth. Before getting into exactly what the Autonomous Database is, we'll have a quick history lesson to bring us up to date. It was first announced in October 2017 at OpenWorld by Larry, saying, "If you eliminate all human labour, you eliminate human error." A bold statement, promising machine learning to deliver industry-leading performance, security, and availability. The autonomous database eventually launched in the public cloud in March 2018 with the ADW Autonomous Data Warehousing flavor, which promised an easy, fast and elastic data warehousing solution. Then, in August 2018, the other currently available flavor of the autonomous database launched, ATP, short for Autonomous Transaction Processing. There are more flavors planned too, like NoSQL, commonly demanded by Internet of Things applications, and Oracle Autonomous Graph Database for network analysis too. By this point, in June 2019, Oracle had already 5,000 autonomous database trials, and then they launched 3 more things. Dedicated private autonomous database, promising customers the very highest levels of security of their data. And the 2 most important ones really for myself and probably the majority of people listening, Oracle Apex and SQL Developer Web. So finally I was able to go back to saying that Apex is available on all versions of the Oracle database. So what is an autonomous database, and how will it help with some of the challenges I mentioned earlier which I face as a developer and that which industry faces too? Now, when I hear the term autonomous, I usually think of an autonomous car, one that drives itself. And that's also the term that Oracle used to describe it too, self-driving. There is automated database and infrastructure management which monitors and tunes the database automatically based on factors such as load, storage and activity. And coming soon are things such as automated indexing, creation of materialized views and selection of SQL plans. It's self-securing, so it protects itself from external attacks and malicious internal users. The latest security patches are applied automatically. And it's self-repairing. As it's built on Oracle's maximum availability architecture, the downtime is therefore minuscule. What does all of this mean? Well, potentially, developers can become more agile by instantly creating and effortlessly using databases that require no manual tuning. As I mentioned, there are 2 different flavors or workload types for autonomous databases: ADW, Autonomous Data Warehousing, and ATP, Autonomous Transaction Processing. ADW is more for storing large volumes of data and using them in a more reporting, BI, analytics type solution where there may be long-running queries. The data is compressed using columnar compression. Now, I'm not a particular expert on that, but all the big data solutions use it, and it's proven for analytics type operations. ATP, on the other hand, is more for a mixed workload type, which may be potentially CPU or I/O intensive, with a large number of transactions such as DML or online transaction processing. The data there is stored in row store format. If you are going to be using the database for an Apex application, an autonomous database, and you're not sure which of these 2 flavors to select, my advice is in 90% of cases you are going to want to go ATP. The PL SQL processing which occurs for page rendering and the type of operations we normally carry out on the data within an Apex application are much more suited to that type of database. Just in case you haven't worked it out already, yes, the autonomous database is definitely a PaaS system, platform as a service setup. All we are really going to be looking after is the data and the applications. So how much is this going to cost me? Well, I'm not going to be able to give you an exact figure. It very much depends on your needs and requirements. There is a cost calculator on the Oracle website to give you an idea, or speak to your local licensing representative. It does, however, offer bring your own license, and SE users get 4 OCPUs, and it's quite flexible in the options that are available. In the example on the screen, I spec'd up the cheapest ATP instance, and as you can see, £1,100 per month. Probably okay if you're a medium to large business, but if you are a student, lone developer, or small company, it might be a little bit too much. But wait, back to the history. At OpenWorld 2019, Larry announced Always free services, of which the Autonomous Database is one of them. Now this is where mine and many other developers' ears really pricked up. We do like free stuff. There was an extremely large amount of activity on social media when this launched. If you want to look back at it, check out the hashtag ThinkAutonomous. Now, free options of the Oracle database that can be used for Apex development isn't actually a new thing. We've had a couple of options for a while, namely the Express Edition version of the database, which was recently updated to 18C, giving a lot of the Enterprise Edition features too. That can be installed on Linux or Windows or into a Docker container for virtualization too. If the server it is installed on is publicly available, that could even be considered to be cloud. Remember, it's just someone else's computer. And I've already mentioned the other one, apex.oracle.com, which is probably the quickest and easiest way to get started, but it is quite limiting in what it offers. So I've put this together and let's see how they compare to this new offering. Now, I'm not going to go through everything here. Feel free to pause the presentation and spend a little bit longer looking at it. I haven't included anything which is the same or has the potential to be, and some of the ones for ATP I'll be swinging back to talk about later, but I just wanted to give a high-level overview of the key differences between the currently available free offerings for Apex development. Looking at the ATP one, on the hardware front, it runs on the very latest Exadata. Now, the Always Free is restricted to 1 CPU and 8 GB of RAM, but it's really the hardware behind it that's going to count there. The database version is 18C, potentially soon to be 19. It will get the latest patches, which, as we know already, will be done online automatically. You can connect development tools to it using a secure wallet, which you can easily download from your cloud account. Support of Always Free options are relatively limited. I'll be coming back to talk about that. Can I use it for production? There's nothing stopping you. That's also a topic that I'll be coming back to. What are the terms of the usage for this database? I badgered Oracle for these on an SR, and they essentially insisted there aren't any, effectively, really. So I think it's fair for us to assume that it is therefore database use terms. One thing I really did push them on though was whether it was acceptable to use it for commercial use, i.e. could I run a profit generating business from an application deployed on a free ATP database, and they ensured me that that was fine. Email I will be coming back to have some with some further comments on later, but yes, you can send emails from the databases. You can create and consume RESTful web services. There is already some blogs on our website how you go about doing that, and everything is the same, whether it's on an autonomous database or on other databases. Now, will it ever shut down? Maybe. There is a term in there that if your instance goes unused for 7 days, then it will turn off, and 90 days later potentially may be terminated or reclaimed by Oracle. I have some further comments on that one later as well. You don't have access to the local file system like you would with your own database, but you are provided with storage buckets in which you can put and retrieve files from instead. Database backups do happen in the Always Free, but you're not able to restore from them. They're more for disaster recovery purposes. So I would recommend manually creating your own backup routine, perhaps into those storage buckets already mentioned. Going along the bottom row in the other things to know, interesting to note that when you go to apex.oracle.com and try and sign up, it now actually redirects you to sign up for a cloud trial instead. The option is still there, you just have to scroll down a little bit further. For XE is probably the most flexible option that we have because we have full control of it. It's a database that we've installed and are hosting. Another main advantage of XE is that if you've installed it locally on your laptop, for example, you then don't need an internet connection in order to be able to use it. On the free ATP ADW databases, it's relatively easy to turn them into paid instances where you can utilize some of the autonomous features like scaling. And we have lots of other things available to us if we are using the free ATP ADW solutions as well. We have the new machine learning capabilities, we have some compute VMs, and we have the new SQL Developer Web, although I believe a standalone edition of SQL Developer Web for on-premise installation and hosting will soon be available. So how does the always free option compare to the full-blown autonomous database? What are the catches of this always free? Well, you are limited to 2 free databases and they can only be created in your home region. It can be any mix of the ATP or ADW databases for those two. Part of the self-driving I mentioned earlier is the autonomous database's ability to scale up resources when required. As I've already mentioned, you don't get that with free, you are still limited to 1 OCPU. There is a storage limit on the database, 20 gigabytes. To put that into some kind of perspective though, I created a table of meaningful customizable data, about 30 columns of sensible data in each row and column, and managed to add about 59 million rows before it started running out of space. Apparently there is a limit on the amount of simultaneous database connections, but I'm assuming there that Apex sessions won't be counting. It will mean external connections. You're unable to preview the newest versions of the database. Something that you'll see if you sign up for the trial is the ability to provision a new version of a 19C database as a trial. You're unable to preview them with the free option. You can't move your database between availability zones or convert them to paid. Similarly, you can't change a paid instance back to a free one either. Now, you technically only have forum support from the Cloud Customer Connect forum, but from what I've seen, they aren't hugely active at the moment. Hopefully this may increase in the future, but you perhaps may get a better response using the ORCL Apex handle hashtag on Twitter in order to post questions. They do back themselves up for disaster recovery purposes, but you're unable to create manual backups like you can with a full autonomous database. So I would therefore recommend doing them yourself with a solution such as Datapump. There is an activity monitor, inactivity monitor really, where after 7 days of inactivity they will potentially shut down, and after 90 days they may be reclaimed. They don't advertise it, but if you don't follow the advice I'll give shortly about setting up email during the trial, then you won't be able to send emails either unless you convert to a paid account. Oracle also state as one of the always free limitations is that there are no vanity URLs. Now, for me personally, the ones I've highlighted in red there were the ones of biggest concern to me, so let's talk a little bit more about them and potentially suggest some solutions. A little bit of a disclaimer first before some of these slides. Some of the things I will cover potentially might be a little bit controversial, and also I anticipate that in the not too distant future they may either be locked down or change as to how they are configured in the first place. The first one is on the support available from Oracle. I mentioned that it is forum support only, i.e. you don't have access to My Oracle support. But when you initially sign up for the trial, you will be emailed a support CSI number, so therefore you do have access to My Oracle support during the trial. In fact, let me explain a little bit clearer. your cloud account can be in one of three states. You can be in the 30-day trial, where you can set up paid and always free resources. You haven't actually upgraded to paid, therefore you cannot be charged no matter what you spin up. There's a little bar at the top that you have to click in order to convert your account to a paid account. When you're in this state, you have access to My Oracle support. You can be in an expired trial. Again, you cannot be charged for this. You haven't upgraded to a paid. At this point, you no longer have access to My Oracle support. A little bit of a warning on the slide for you there. When your trial account converts to an expired trial account, i.e. your trial expires, the email you initially receive is a little bit misleading. It seems to suggest that your cloud account has been disabled, but I was able to successfully log into it and carry on using my always free resources. And then the final one is when you're in a paid account, so you've upgraded either during or after your trial. At this point, you can then be charged by Oracle. And when you're in this state, you do have access to My Oracle support for both your always free and your paid services. Which is the solution, really. It seems, though, that after upgrading to a paid account, even if you are still just using free resources, you can then raise tickets on My Oracle support for those always free instances, even if you don't have any paid resources running as well. I tried it when there was an odds issue for one of my always free databases, which was from an expired trial account. I upgraded the trial account to paid. I still haven't actually paid anything. Warning, you need to be a little bit careful about what you are setting up. But anyway, My Oracle support responded and fixed the odds issue on my always free database. I mentioned that after 7 days that the instance will shut down. There is actually a known bug at the moment, which means it may shut down even with activity. But that is, I believe, currently getting fixed and shortly to be deployed. And then also after 90 days, your instance may be reclaimed if there is inactivity for that period of time. Now, Oracle are a little bit sketchy, really, on the information as to what exactly counts as inactivity and how this job is going to be working in order to detect it. Fundamentally, I'm not really against it. These are free resources that Oracle are providing us with. But unlike, say, on apex.oracle.com, where you get an email saying it will be purged or disappear in a certain amount of time if you don't log in again or stop the purge, and then it's just a couple of clicks to stop it, they don't seem to have configured or set up anything like that in the cloud yet, so you don't actually know when your instance has gone down or whether you need to log in to make sure that it isn't going to be reclaimed either. However, is there a potential way to get around this? Well, quite probably, I think, is the answer to this. I created 2 autonomous databases, each with a RESTful web service on, which just added a little bit of data into a table, and then a scheduled job on the opposing database, which called that web service on the other database. And those jobs ran on a schedule, and therefore the web services were running every day, and there was activity registering on the database. Now, when I did that test, those instances did go down eventually, but that was because of the known bug I mentioned earlier, because I'd been using my databases right up until the point they closed down anyway. But I'm pretty certain that solution would work. Unless we found out the specifics of exactly what counts for inactivity, we're never really going to know, and it's quite possible they may add something to detect that type of automated job that I've suggested there. I think if they added a sensible notification system that if you don't respond to it, then it turns off, I think I'd be perfectly happy with that, really. So before talking about the email workaround that you will need to follow during your trial, I first need to explain how to send emails from an autonomous database, because it's a little bit different. Firstly, go to your user account and generate some SMTP credentials for your user and set the parameters using the Apex Instance admin. Then go into your email delivery and add an approved sender. The approved sender is the email addresses from which emails can originate from your database. And then you can happily use the Apex mail package as you would as normal in order to send emails. So what's the problem then? Well, there are a couple of problems at the moment. If you have an expired trial, then where I just mentioned previously you need to go to set up email approved senders, the option is greyed out in the option menu. You can click to go into it, but then you receive a message saying that you must upgrade in order to add any approved senders. Also at the moment, on the right there, you can see a quick summary of it. It seems to only be working in the 2 US data centers at the moment, according to the status page, email delivery this is that I'm talking about. So, a couple of solutions for these two things. Create all your approved senders during the trial. They stay there after the trial ends, so as long as you've added them all before the trial expires, then they will be there and you will still be able to send emails. If your trial has already expired though, and you either didn't add them or now you need to add some more, then you are going to have to convert to a paid account. Now, it won't cost you anything to add these approved senders, but if you then do go over the 1,000 free emails a month, because you're now in a paid account, then you are going to be charged. It's not much, it's something like 10p for every 1,000 emails. But if this is something you are going to be doing, I would perhaps suggest adding a wrapper process around the package that you utilize in order to send emails so that you are counting them and then after so many they get disabled. Also, the other thing you need to do for the solution on the right is check that it is available in your home region when you select where to set up your cloud account. Now, if you are in a trial or a paid account, you can subscribe to other regions, add the credentials and approve senders in that region, and then utilize the mail server of that other region in order to send emails. Both of these, I anticipate that Oracle will change exactly how they work, and obviously email delivery will be available in more data centers going forwards. Now, one of the things it says in the documentation is that no vanity URLs are possible. Now, what it's referring to is the bit before the Apex section of the URL. Essentially, currently you can't configure or map your own domain names to cloud instances. Now, this is something that is possible with standard Exadata instances, both regular and the Exadata Express Edition too. So is there a solution to this? Well, yes, there is actually. Now, I'm not going to go over now technically how to set this up, as there are a few blogs out there which are very easy to find and very easy to follow. So I would suggest having a search around for some of those key terms there. Essentially, to summarise though, it's to utilise something I've only briefly mentioned so far in this presentation, which is a compute instance that you're also able to set up 2 free instances of in your always free services of the cloud account. Now, compute instances are essentially your own Linux box in the cloud. So, as you can imagine, the possibilities are very vast as to what you can do with this box. For this purpose, you can simply install a web server on there, nginx or Apache, for example, and then set up a reverse proxy to forward requests to the autonomous database. Configure the domain with your domain controller to send the URL requests onto the compute instance, and then bingo, you have your own URL. You can even set up security certificates on the web server utilizing a free certificate from Let's Encrypt, and then also set up and install certbot on the server as well to rotate the certificate. And then you now have secure traffic on your autonomous database instance too. Whilst I've mentioned it, the compute instance, some other potential ideas for it. You could even install XE on your compute instance if you want. You could run your website or blog from one of the compute instances. You could install and utilize a Node.js server, which has a huge number of options and usage. I even saw someone had set up one of their Oracle compute instances to be a Minecraft server as well. So going back to ADB generally now, I mentioned earlier that it is PaaS, Platform as a Service. It must therefore be quick to set up and provision. Well, the process from absolutely nothing is very straightforward and fast. As you can see on the screen, just 7 steps. If you start at oracle.com/cloud or apex.oracle.com and click sign up for free tier, enter your details, enter your mobile number. A quick tip there for anyone in the UK is miss off the leading 0 in order to receive the text message. Enter your payment information. Now that sounds quite scary. They will off your card for £1. I think it is just used for address verification purposes, but unless you upgrade your account to be paid, you cannot be charged anything further. Once you've done that, you're then into your account. You've logged in, and then you can click the button to create a database. Enter a few basic details of the database, its name, and which flavour of the database. Wait about 3 to 4 minutes, and then the database will be there and created. And then for us Apex developers, from either the Service console or the Tools menu of the database, click Oracle Application Express. And then we're in Apex. It's really that simple, and end-to-end can be done in under 10 minutes. Once you have the cloud account as well, provisioning databases is then just a couple of clicks. Now, to me, that's pretty crazy. So now we have our database set up and are looking to start developing in Apex. Are there any differences that we need to be aware of as Apex developers? Well, firstly, one thing to mention is that user accounts for Apex workspaces, including the administrator, are actually database accounts. And you are also limited to a single instance administrator for the internal workspace and can't add more or administrate add more users for administration from internal. There are a few differences in the internal administration itself, as are circled on the screen there. Requests and self-service for workspaces isn't there if you are currently utilising any of that functionality. You can't configure productivity and sample applications for the instance. Now, if you provision a workspace, they are still available to be installed, the built-in productivity and sample applications, but they cannot be configured from the internal administration. There is a lot of the instance configuration that is a lot more locked down. Some key highlights for that are the configuration of a web proxy, the Oracle Wallet, and also the print server configuration. Other than that though, I think everything else is the same within the internal administration. I haven't come across any other differences. So that's the internal administration. Now for Apex development itself. I mentioned previously that there is no print server configuration, and that's because printing isn't supported in Apex in the autonomous database. For example, in the report configuration, you can still tick XLF, PDF and RTF, but when you try and then use them from the front-end report menu, the options are no longer there. Perhaps the options in the builder will soon be hidden. But there are some solutions to this. All the third-party printing solutions are supported. So Explorer's tool of choice, PLPDF, works. That works by installing a series of packages into another schema for constructing documents. AOP, Apex Office Print works, and also coming in Apex 19.2 is a little bit closer integration with AOP in Apex, and also a slightly less well-known open source solution, JS-PDF, will still work for creating PDFs from HTML5 content too. There is some restriction on authentication schemes within your which your Apex applications can use. You're not able to have HTTP header variable, LDAP authentication, or Oracle Application Server single sign-on either. Solutions-wise, there's not really much we can do about those ones, but I usually tend to utilise a custom authentication scheme most of the time anyway. Big plus on the autonomous database, as you effectively have sys access, you can grant DBMS crypto to other users for password hashing, something, for example, which isn't possible on apex.oracle.com. Now, because it's a PAS system, there is no direct access to the file system where the database is running. But there is an easy solution for this. Oracle kindly provide us with object storage in the form of buckets, which you can create. You initially get, I think it's 20 gigabytes for free file storage, and it works just like a shared directory in the cloud. There is a package then, DBMS Cloud package, which you can utilize to interact with these files. It takes a little bit of setting up, and you need to create your credentials, but there are a number of blogs out there on this if you search for those terms that it'll be easy to follow through afterwards. So everything else that I've found or read about which is different, which may affect us as Apex developers, is on the screen. The Apex Builder is only available in English. You can't upload files to the database in a public application. The user needs to be authenticated. There are some limitations on the Oracle text functionality if you utilize that at all. They actually recently added the ability to natively use Oracle text in reports, which I would recommend checking out as well. The database character set is AO32 UTF-8, so if you use anything else and you're different and you are migrating to the autonomous database, it is something to consider. Now, when I originally wrote this presentation, database links were not supported. They are actually supported now, but only over TCP/IP with SSL authentication, and you will need to utilize the object storage for the SSO file needed for that authentication. XML table types and some of the media and spatial data are not supported. You can't utilize UTL HTTP for insecure outbound web service calls. You also have no access to the ACL or wallet configuration. Although I was able to run ACL commands as the database administrator user and remove the wildcard one that Oracle had placed there automatically for me. Now, I'm going to come back to this again shortly, but you can only use the Apex version determined by Oracle, which at the time of writing is 19.1, and this may be upgraded at any time too. Migrating to the autonomous database from wherever you currently are is not as hard as you might think, depending on any prerequisites you might have, like connections to other systems, for example. Now, I'm not going to try and better those three on the screen fantastic blogs that are already out there from Joel, David and Todd on this subject. They're very easy to follow and explain the process very succinctly. For Apex applications though, you can back them up using the Apex Application Archive productivity application, and then entire schemas can be migrated utilizing SQL command line, instant client and DBMS data pump. Again, utilizing those storage buckets that I've previously mentioned. So, to summarize what I think are the biggest benefits for developers. Now, apart from the things I've already mentioned and talked about, everything else is, I think, the same. So it's not like we're going to be utilizing a new technology. The vast majority of things are very familiar to us. It's very quick and easy to provision an environment to use and also to migrate to it. If I need a new on-prem environment at my organization, I have to fill out a form selecting the number of CPUs and how much disk space, and then submit it to the DBA team in order for it to be provisioned. I just hope I don't change my mind later on how much disk space I need, for example. It's then available anywhere in the world for you to utilize. SQL Developer Web is available if you need to do some SQL data manipulation more on the move. All you need is a web browser. The autonomous database is going to give us new ways to monitor and track performance of the instances. And there's lots of new features for us to try, such as machine learning, chatbots, notifications, and there is a marketplace as well with a host of different development services, and it can be easily connected to the development cloud service too for automated builds and deploys. So I mentioned at the beginning, I am someone who cares a lot about support, and next I wanted to assess if anything might be different for us when supporting an Apex application which is deployed in the cloud, specifically the ADB cloud, over say on-premise. Now I had a good starting point for this. It was a few years ago, but a previous presentation I did was on application support with Apex, which discussed topics like environments, logging and investigating issues, releases, monitoring and performance. I went through that presentation and the topics discussed, and largely speaking, not much is different really. One opportunity it does give us is the ability to create something I discussed in that presentation, which is multiple environments easily for development, test and production. In fact, with the new clone option available in the dashboard, it actually makes that process incredibly easy. Support-wise, we are perhaps going to have to be a bit more reliant on My Oracle support if anything does go wrong. And then we'll be reliant upon their SLAs. And that potentially may come with its own set of challenges. For monitoring and reporting, as well as the built-in Apex monitoring and reporting that I discussed as part of that presentation, we have some new ones available to us in the dashboard for keeping an eye on resources and utilization of the environment. There is one thing with the autonomous database which I think at the moment does present a bit of a challenge for support, and that is the auto-patching and upgrading. I personally just don't know enough about it yet and how it's going to work. The impression I'm getting is that I potentially might go to bed one night and wake up to a new version of the database or Apex on which my applications are running. Now this potentially presents a bit of a problem really to supporting an Apex application. Ideally in the support world, upgrades and patches should be planned and tested beforehand before going into production. Currently the cloud is on Apex 19.1. Now Apex 19.2 has actually been out a few months already, but I haven't received an email to my cloud account email address to tell me when mine might be upgraded or if I would like to try it. I've mentioned there is a preview version of the 19C database available, but as far as I know there is no such thing for Apex at the moment. I was listening to a talk from SQL Maria, and if you are using the dedicated infrastructure, which I mentioned briefly earlier in the presentation, released at the same time as Apex, then apparently we are going to have a little bit more control over this. You will be able to select the window in which upgrades will happen and perhaps delay it slightly with policies too. We may be about to become a lot more reliant on the compatibility parameter in Apex and just have to hope that all our plugins don't stop working due to changes in the jQuery JavaScript libraries. Use of plugins was something I mentioned in my support presentation, in that they can present new challenges on upgrade or when Oracle change things and deprecate features. Features do become deprecated or change in new versions. Unfortunately, I probably can't really give you an exact answer on what we're going to do here. It's one I'm going to be thinking about more and monitoring for changes going forward with the autonomous cloud. So the final topic I'm going to talk about today is security. Well, it's something I've been pushing for, but if we do migrate to the cloud, just by default, we are suddenly going to become a lot more secure straight away. As we know, the latest security updates and patches are going to be applied for us automatically. How many people do that on premise? The machine learning of the autonomous database is, in theory, going to protect us from malicious attacks, both external and internal. The data on the database is encrypted at rest. We're going to be connecting to and using our development tools more securely with the new wallet. And also it's very easy to enable two-step authentication for login to the cloud console too. Cloud providers invest heavily in the latest security innovations and talent, so we as an organisation potentially will not have to. In terms of Apex secure development though, nothing really is that different. But if our applications are going to be more publicly accessible, then perhaps we should start ensuring we are following secure development principles. I've recently published a blog on Apex security, which is definitely worth checking out. So to summarise, ADB is going to remove some of my extra hats and give me a bit more time for developing as well. Because it's so easily accessible, I think ADB is going to help support low-code growth, especially in Apex. There are a few teething problems at the moment. The instance is shutting down recently, orders crashed for me on a couple of occasions, and I've also had the missing Apex files issue as well. Security is equal, if not better, by default. Other than the issue with automatic upgrades, I think the support processes around Apex applications deployed in an autonomous database are largely going to be the same. At the moment, the benefits for me probably do slightly outweigh the limitations or challenges. So is cloud someone else's computer? Yes, of course it is. But it's someone else's fantastic computer with scaling, support, availability zones, backups, distribution, upgrades, security patching, security, and responsibility too. So Apex on an Oracle Autonomous Database is now available utilising the link on the screen. Please sign up and have a trial. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this presentation has given you a few things to think about. If you want any more information, please take a look at the blogs on our website at the link on the screen, or drop me an email instead. Thank you very much.